The FIA has just changed how power will be used by Formula One's 2026 cars in Hungary, and Ferrari appears to be arriving with an answer prepared before its rivals have fully understood the consequences. For a qualifying lap at the Hungaroring, the FIA will permit up to 9 megajoules of energy recovery, establish a power-limited distance of 1,885 meters, and define several specific zones for electrical power reduction. On paper, this looks like an opportunity for the car with the strongest hybrid system, but the simulation reveals a very different reality. Of the 9 megajoules available, a representative 2026 car is expected to recover only around 6.6 megajoules productively. Attempting to harvest the remainder could instead cost between 1 and 1.5 seconds. That means the Hungarian Grand Prix will not simply be decided by who has the most energy available. The decisive factor will be who can deploy it in the right places while preserving downforce, traction, and tyre temperature across all 14 corners. And just as the FIA shifts the performance priorities towards those areas, Ferrari is introducing the third version of its Macarena rear wing. Its design combines hanger flaps rooted in a Mercedes concept, details resembling Red Bull's development direction, and mini flaps influenced by McLaren. Ferrari will also return to its high-downforce floor featuring 3 vertical elements. Charles Leclerc, however, refuses to declare Ferrari the favourite. "We have to be cautious because it is very difficult to predict the performance level," he said. Frédéric Vasseur issued a similar warning. "The track could suit us, but nothing is guaranteed and we have to execute the weekend perfectly." So, has Ferrari genuinely understood the FIA's demands faster than Mercedes, Red Bull and McLaren? Or are all these upgrades still concealing one weakness that could destroy its opportunity? Watch until the end to find out, and if you enjoy Formula One analysis like this, subscribe so you do not miss the next important development. The first point to understand is that the FIA has not simply handed Ferrari or any other team more usable power. Its Power Unit Information document establishes a circuit-specific energy architecture, defining how much energy can be recovered and how the electrical component may behave around different sections of the lap. For Hungary, the maximum recovery allocation is 8.5 megajoules in the standard race configuration, 9 with overtake mode and 9 in qualifying. The permitted power reduction rate is 100 kilowatts per second, while the FIA has identified several areas where a 150 kilowatt step is permitted. These are located around the approaches to turns 4 and 5, turns 8 and 9, the sequence from turns 12 to 14, and the exit of the final corner. But those locations explain why the headline allowance can be misleading. None sits at the end of a genuinely long, uninterrupted full throttle section where the battery would naturally become exhausted. In other words, the Hungaroring does not provide a useful opportunity for superclipping in qualifying. The driver must instead recover energy through conventional braking and, more importantly, by lifting before the braking phase begins. The simulation attributes 3.75 megajoules, or 57% of total recovery, to lift and coast. Pure braking supplies only 2.86 megajoules, or 43%. The relevant lift points include the approaches to turns 1 and 2, the turns 6 and 7 chicane, turn 11 and the final complex. This is not energy recovery as a secondary consideration. It becomes part of how the driver constructs the lap. Lifting too early costs time immediately. Lifting too late may leave insufficient electrical energy for the next acceleration zone. Deploying too aggressively after one corner can weaken the car later in the lap, while preserving too much energy means crossing the line with performance that was never used. The simulated car deploys 10.2 megajoules, while recovering only 6.6. Its 4 megajoule battery reserve falls as low as 0.05 megajoules before retaining 0.4 at the finish for launch energy. Yet the MGU-K operates at or near its maximum 350 kilowatt output for only 2.5 seconds. That is because the Hungaroring's slower exits make the car traction limited. Even if maximum electrical power is theoretically available, the rear tyres cannot always transfer it to the circuit. Approximately 45% of acceleration time occurs below 215 kilometers per hour, where the tyres rather than the regulations restrict how much MGU-K performance can be exploited. This is where Ferrari's opportunity becomes more credible, but also more complicated. The SF26 has shown convincing speed through slow and medium-speed corners, with strong turn-in and the ability to carry speed towards the apex. Those qualities should be valuable through the connected sections of the Hungaroring, particularly in the middle sector where one poorly positioned corner entry can damage several hundred meters of the lap. But corner entry is only half the problem. Ferrari must also straighten the car cleanly and apply the throttle without provoking rear wheel slip. The SF26 has not always matched its mid-corner quality with equally reliable traction. When the rear begins to slide, the immediate loss on corner exit can become a longer-term tyre problem. That risk is amplified in Hungary because there is almost no meaningful opportunity for the tyres to cool after the first sector. Pirelli has selected its softest range, the C3, C4 and C5, with the C5 expected to be the principal qualifying tyre. Preparing it will require a delicate compromise. An aggressive outlap could produce excellent grip in the opening corners, but push the compound beyond its ideal temperature before the final sector. A conservative preparation lap could protect the tyre for turns 11 to 14, only to leave it underprepared for the heavy braking zone at turn 1. Ferrari may possess the necessary peak performance, but Mercedes has more consistently demonstrated an ability to keep the tyre inside its window across a complete lap. That distinction matters because the general 2026 simulation forecasts a Hungarian pole lap of 1 minute 17.748 seconds. That is 2.38 seconds slower than Leclerc's 2025 pole time, despite a predicted top speed of 325.5 kilometers per hour, 10.4 kilometers per hour faster than the 2025 reference. The apparent contradiction shows where lap time has moved under the new regulations. The cars can be faster on the main straight while losing much more through the corners. Sector 1, containing the most important full throttle sections, carries the smallest relative penalty. Sector 3 produces the largest loss at approximately 0.96 seconds or around 4.5%. That final sector is precisely where Ferrari's performance could become vulnerable. Turns 11 to 14 place greater emphasis on mass, direction change, traction, and rear tyre temperature. A car can arrive there having looked competitive through the first two sectors, only to lose the lap as the tyres and balance move beyond their optimum condition. Ferrari's new aerodynamic package is intended to address the broader demand for load without introducing an excessive drag penalty. The third version of the Macarena rear wing was discussed before Spa, but Ferrari chose not to rush it into competition. The engineers working under Loic Serra continued its development before committing to the Hungarian specification. The most visible additions are two triangular hanger flaps positioned above the outer regions of the movable flap. The basic solution originated with Mercedes and will be prohibited under next year's regulations, but Ferrari's positioning appears closer to an interpretation developed by Red Bull during the season. The more distinctive feature sits near the center of the wing, because Ferrari's architecture does not require a conventional central actuator. The team can use the corresponding regulatory volume for a complex arrangement of mini-flaps influenced by McLaren's concept. Other teams exploited similar space in Monaco, where there were no active aerodynamic zones, but had to remove those devices at later circuits. Ferrari's different architecture allows it to introduce the arrangement while retaining active aero. According to the available analysis, no other team can currently combine those elements in the same way. That does not make the wing an automatic performance breakthrough. It does, however, give Ferrari another method of generating the load demanded by the Hungaroring while preserving the efficiency required in straight mode. The high-downforce floor, including the return of 3 vertical elements, completes a package directed towards the areas that matter most in Budapest. Active aerodynamics will still protect straight-line performance. The simulation identifies two major deployment phases, 2.55 megajoules across 9.5 seconds on the main straight and 2.29 megajoules over 7.7 seconds between turns 3 and 4. Together, those sections account for a substantial proportion of the lap's electrical use. But the real limitation is not the 9 megajoule recovery ceiling. Once the allowance rises beyond approximately 7 megajoules, the simulation produces no meaningful lap time improvement. Even reducing the permitted recovery to 6 megajoules changes the result by less than 1/10, with the small variation attributed to computational dispersion rather than a genuine advantage. Trying to recover more through harder braking would not solve the problem either. Across the lap, the car dissipates 12.22 megajoules during deceleration. Aerodynamic drag accounts for 5.52 megajoules that cannot be recovered. The MGU-K captures 6.44, and only 0.27 is lost through the friction brakes. At the heaviest simulated braking point, 350 kilowatts of recovery corresponds to only around 21% of the required braking force. The friction brakes must absorb the remainder because the MGU-K is power limited. Changing the braking style produces only about 0.04 of a second difference and almost no meaningful change in recovered energy. Brembo's separate analysis reinforces how braking has changed. At turn 2, the predicted stopping distance rises from 122 meters in 2025 to 143 meters in 2026. The braking phase increases from 2.59 to 2.85 seconds, while deceleration falls from 4.2 G to 3.7 G. Pedal load also drops from 144 to 110 kilograms. Longer stopping phases create opportunities for regeneration, but they do not remove the need for aerodynamic stability and precise balance. The driver must manage the interaction between the rear axle MGU-K and the conventional braking system while preparing the car for the next traction event. All of this supports Ferrari's belief that it can fight at the front. Yet it also explains Vasseur's insistence on perfect execution. Hungary may reward the SF26's strengths more than Spa did, but it also concentrates several of Ferrari's uncertainties into a single lap. Rear stability, C5 preparation, traction, hybrid deployment, and the ability to maintain performance through the final sector. Mercedes remains dangerous because its advantage may not appear as one dramatic peak. The W17 has more frequently delivered repeatable qualifying laps and stable race stints. Its drivers have generally been able to control temperature and degradation without requiring the same narrow balance window Ferrari sometimes needs. The changing asphalt adds another variable. Recently resurfaced areas around turns 1 and 12, together with newer sections from the previous redevelopment, will give the drivers different grip characteristics from the older central part of the lap. A setup that performs well on one surface may compromise the car elsewhere. Track position will then magnify every decision. Overtaking is difficult, largely concentrated around turn 1, and following another car can worsen thermal degradation by reducing cooling. A one-stop strategy may remain competitive with a theoretically faster two-stop, simply because surrendering position creates a greater cost than preserving the tyres. Hamilton's record adds significance but not certainty. He has won 8 times at the Hungaroring and now arrives with 5 podiums, 159 points, and his first Grand Prix victory for Ferrari already secured in 2026. Yet even the most successful driver in the circuit's history cannot compensate for energy being deployed in the wrong place or a rear tyre overheating before the end of a qualifying lap. Leclerc's caution is therefore not an attempt to lower expectations without reason. In Monaco, we were supposed to be the favourites, but we achieved results below expectations, he explained. Hungary offers a similar temptation to assume that circuit characteristics alone will determine the competitive order. The evidence points to something more nuanced. The FIA's Hungary-specific parameters reduce the value of simply chasing the maximum recovery number. They place greater emphasis on efficient deployment, high downforce, connected corner performance, and traction. Ferrari's latest aerodynamic configuration appears deliberately aligned with those demands. But being prepared is not the same as being fastest. Ferrari must prove its three-rival-inspired wing delivers the intended load, that its floor remains consistent across mixed grip levels, and that Hamilton and Leclerc can control the rear tyres without surrendering the rotation that makes the SF26 competitive. So, has Ferrari genuinely produced the most complete response to the FIA's Hungarian energy rules? Or will Mercedes expose another gap between the SF26's theoretical potential and what Ferrari can actually deliver under pressure? Tell us which team you believe has the real advantage in Budapest and why in the comments below.